Good afternoon. It is Thursday, March 24th at 4 p.m. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Harlan Municipal Utilities Board of Trustees to order. Need an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Shelton, aye.
Okay, somebody has something going on in the background here. You guys can go ahead.
Okay.
I'll figure it out.
Okay, moving along. Item number 3 is the approval of the consent agenda. It includes the minutes of the March 10th electronic board meeting, abstract of claims number 1209 in the amount of $736,993, and upcoming board meetings, April 14th will be electronic and April 28th will be regular.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Shelton, aye. Reese, aye.
Did I miss you? Sorry. Just jumped right over you, didn't I?
Item number 4 is the materials bid results for the Wellfield electrical system upgrade.
Okay, this is the
Oh, now I can.
Yes.
Yep.
Can you hear us? Yes, can you hear us? Must be on his end.
Must be on his end.
I'll just go grab my phone and tell him.
Okay. Basically what this is we rebid the electrical well. That's me on the system, backfeeding.
So somebody has their speakers on and we plan to they need to be using the headphones.
He's logged in twice.
Either that or mute.
Yeah.
Matt is logged in twice.
He needs to mute.
I just need you to get that $6.
Okay. As the board may recall, we rebid the materials for the electrical distribution in the Wellfield project, moving some of the project to single phase instead of the entire project being three phase. So we had our bid opening to rebid it, and I'll turn it over to Al with P&E Engineering to kind of give you an update on what we found.
Okay, well, generally, I don't have the bid tab with me. You had it there if you need specifics, but broadly speaking, we got 3 bids from those suppliers we expected to, Wesco, Resco, and Border States. Fortunately, one of the 3 bid every item that we were looking for, so we got a good response to the request. Most of the items were what I would call reasonably priced. Overall, the total was about 5% above my estimate. Given where we are today, I think that's pretty reasonable. The two real downsides of what we did, transformer delivery times are getting worse. We were hoping they might be a little better. 3-phase pad mount transformer, which we need 1 of for the project, was only 1 person bid it, and delivery is in November of this year. The single-phase pads, which we need 11 of, only 1 person bid them, and delivery is in March of next year. So we're looking at a year lead time on transformers. I don't think we can do any better. There's no point in waiting. The suppliers are telling me that it's only going to get worse. And they don't expect it to be better until perhaps toward the end of 23. So I think our best bet is to take what we have today. It will work. I think we can get all of the electrical part in as part of the water project. We're going to bid the whole thing as part of the water system project. But we can get all of the electrical in this fall, late this fall, except for the transformers. And then as soon as they come in next spring, they can install the transformers, finish up the electrical work, and get service to the new wells at that time. That's the short story of it.
Short story of it, yeah. So the bottom line is the materials, the inflation issue wasn't quite as bad as we thought it might be, 5%, which we think is pretty reasonable. However, even under this revised scenario, we still have some delivery time issues on some of the equipment. But the recommendation of the engineer and management is to go ahead and accept the material bids for the water, electric distribution of the well field project.
So you're 5% over on what your estimates were for this single phase plan, but we're still below what our original estimate was, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, just a rough estimate, and it's hard to make maybe a direct comparison, but going to single phase saves us about $100,000. Plus or minus depending on how the prices work. But yes, this is a considerable savings. It's still a big project though. I really want to emphasize that we're doing a lot of work out there. It's a big project. It's going to upgrade the entire electric service to both the well field and the sewage treatment plant. It's going to provide a backup to all of the wells, both the existing as well as the new ones. It'll provide a backup to the sewage treatment plant. So I think it's a good project, and overall will meet your needs.
Now, the reason we broke this out was because of the long lead items.
Partly.
Yeah.
It was actually three things. When we did the package 2 months ago, we were trying just to focus on the long lead time items. And so I didn't have a complete package of material to bid at that time. When we got the transformer bids in, they were 8 months, talking about that time. But it was after that we changed from 3-phase to single phase. So that changed the material requirements considerably. So the bid this time picked up the things that we didn't purchase the first time because of lead time. It picked up the change from 3-phase to single phase, and also picked up the rest of the package, if you will, kind of some odds and ends that were not in the original package.
Yeah. Now, I guess the second part of my question is, how will this impact because of the emergency standby services that we'll have to have, and generator and that type of thing?
It's all consistent with the overall plan. We're going to make an emergency tie to the generator that's out in the yard out there by the substation, the feeder in the trailers. Those generators will be available to feed both the water, all the water system, the water well system, and the sewage treatment plant as part of this project that we're doing.
Okay.
We're doing the tie-in at the existing location where the generators are now, rather than moving a generator down to the well field.
Okay, because that's what we originally talked about doing, was putting a generator in the well field, but now we're tying to the existing.
Yeah. By doing this full loop, we're able to tie in where the generators sit now.
Okay, and so we don't have to go to that expense then of additional generators?
No, this loop will provide what their EPA is looking for on backup, so.
Okay. I don't have any other.
I'll approve the materials and the well field system upgrade.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Cyber aye.
Sheldon, aye.
Item number 5 is the horizontal pressure filter number 1.
Okay, this is the remediation, adding the torpedo sand to pressure filter number 1. What we're asking for is number A, the pay estimate number 2, final invoice, the amount of $7,053. And then item B, the closeout documents from the engineer. And we have pulled the cap, for lack of a better word, on the tank, and the bed is clear. So it appears again to have worked. So both pressure treatment filters now, or pre-treatment filters now, are remediated and appear to be working as they should have originally, so.
Okay.
So does this help with with production now that they're optimized?
I'm not sure that it actually helps from a production standpoint, but what it does is it should, once the next step in the last step in the remediation process is to replace the membranes. And so where it'll help is the life of the membranes when we get those replaced, because you won't have so much media flowing through and you won't have it packed in the way it is now on the membranes. So.
Is
Is this also going to help with the amount of chemicals that we were using? Or will that also be the membranes?
Not sure.
It shouldn't really impact the amount of chemicals that we've been using. It's just going to take and reduce the amount of load that the ROs have to take and treat, because we're getting it all picked up in filters instead of them making to the RO.
Okay.
So it should help with the filters,
Yes,
filters.
yes.
I'll make a motion that we pay the estimate for the final invoice
Close that.
and close out the documents.
Second.
All right, roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Cyber die.
Sheldon, aye.
Item number 6, McClure Anti-Degradation Study, IDNR required, non-budgeted.
Yes, this is one of the items that came up, one of the stipulations when they reissued the MPDES permit was that we do this anti-degradation study. What it relates to is a chemical change that was made back in somewhere in the time frame 2012 to 2014, and it never had the associated study when that was done. So the DNR wanted it done at this point when they reissued the permit.
I didn't put that in any of your guys' packets because that was the indicated.
This is the
Yeah.
study. It's a big document, so.
But I mean, out of the 3 recommendations, we're going with our current operation, or the 3 proposals that were in that study, correct? One was get 80 acres and create a lagoon and,
It's still out for public comment at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Don't we go forward?
There's still other
Yeah.
things that still have to move forward
Okay.
before that can be determined. But that appears to be our best option.
yeah, the most economical.
Basically, we're just receiving and filing the study at this
Okay.
point in time, subject to public hearing, so.
And we need a motion on this then?
Yes.
Okay,
Just to
we
receive and file.
receive and file the McClure anti-degradation study or whatever.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Cyber die.
Sheldon, aye.
Okay, item number 7, Bobcat mini excavator lease in the net amount of $63,798.
Okay, the plan here is our backhoe tractor was scheduled for replacement. And the difficulty we have is putting that thing in people's backyards and sometimes front yards, how much damage we do and how much we have to repair. So the thinking was that we'll keep the excavator, or I should say the backhoe, for larger projects. And what we'll do is the Bobcat mini excavator will be set up in a program similar to what we do with our Bobcat skid steer, where we always have a new machine and it's replaced on a regular basis. So it's the same type of arrangement that we have for the skid steer. Just instead of buying a big new backhoe, we're going to go with this mini excavator so we don't do as much damage at customer premises, can get into tighter environments whenever we need to dig.
So how long is the lease and how long is this $63,000 expense cover?
So it's not, they call it a lease. What it is we purchase the machine up front, and then every year we trade the old machine in through government program, and it comes with an expense that'll be similar to the skid steer, which is roughly right around the amount of $5,000, I do believe. And the reason that this was going on here is this is actually budgeted for the next fiscal year, but there's 9 build spots left this year for machines due to long lead times, and they're going quickly. So this would be one of those things that we would not receive or pay for until after the next fiscal year. This is just getting our name on the build list that we want this unit.
And you don't have to upgrade every year.
Nope, you can choose to
That's
do
something you can decide. That's what they do with the other machine also.
So we're not actually going to write a check for this. We're just going to commit
Yes.
funding for this, even though it isn't until the 2023 budget year.
Correct, and that is in the quote, they understand that we're just putting our name on it, and receipt will not be done until after our fiscal year.
Because they only had X amount of slots left and they're not even sure they're going to be able to build next year because of supply issues, so
And then there's a commitment sheet that will be signed to say that, yes, we want to order it and go.
I'll make a motion that we enter this Bobcat mini excavator lease.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Carol, aye.
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Sheldon, aye.
Okay, item number 8 is the Southwest Power Pool annual membership assessment in the amount of $6,000.
This one actually should have been on March's agenda, or I should say on February's agenda, but I failed to forward the email to get it routed, but it's our annual membership assessment, same as it's been, so.
I'll make a motion to accept it.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Carol, aye.
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Sheldon, aye.
Okay, item 9, MISO minimum participation criteria, attachment L.
This is for our credit policy with regard to MISO. We also do this on an annual basis, and it requires board action because it's effectively borrowing against production coming out of the Louisa plant. But it was determined in years past that the best way to do it was to have board action before we entered any credit policy or any credit policy agreement. So, is this signed by the chair or do I sign it?
They authorize to have you sign it.
Okay, all right. So you'll also be authorizing me to sign it. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we sign the MISO agreement.
Second.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Carol, aye.
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Sheldon, aye.
Okay. Page 2. Item number 10 is the Ribbon Network phone switch support contract renewal in the amount of $20,495.
Okay, this is our annual support agreement for our digital telephone switch. And pricing stays pretty constant. It just requires an annual renewal for the support agreement.
What does it mean by saying pending legal counsel review?
I didn't get it to Matt before the meeting in time for him to review it, so it's subject to his review on this.
So is that cart before the horse, or is that the normal process, or are we usually?
It's reasonably common.
Yeah.
Most of these are boilerplate and they're similar to prior years, but we still always like to have Matt check it over. If there was a problem, he would pull it before it actually went to the vendor.
Yeah, okay.
And this is a budgeted item, correct?
Yes, this is a budgeted item.
I'll make a motion to approve it pending legal counsel review.
Second.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Carol, aye.
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Sheldon, aye.
Okay, item number 11, response time for emergency personnel.
Yes, we had the conversation at the last meeting about response times, changing it from 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And the biggest or primary reason for it was to broaden the scope of potential candidates for new hires. The original 30-minute response restricted us to like half a dozen communities. And by going this broader scope, 45 minutes, it gets us up to Denison, basically over to Elkhorn, Neola. It broadens the area for potential new employees.
What's PERS, P-E-R-S? Where's that at?
I'm sorry, what?
The
It's
second.
probably Persia.
Okay, Persia?
Yeah,
And Defiance, right?
yeah.
Correct. And just because they're on this list doesn't mean it'll be an acceptable response time. They will still map everything before we get an applicant, because
Yeah.
like if someone's north of Denison, between Denison and Schleswig, they're probably not going to meet this response time. So just because something's listed doesn't mean it will necessarily qualify.
We'll still evaluate individually on the applicants, so.
So the state requirement is an hour, right?
Correct.
So we're just you're just wanting us,
We're adding 15 minutes to the response time.
And expands the population pool 3.5 times. I think
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
smart thing.
It's a no-brainer.
And in the bottom line, the question came up about emergency type situations. And, I mean, they already, if somebody has an issue and they can't respond immediately, they just call someone else in town to see if they can cover it, till they get there, that type of thing. So it won't really be a new process as far as, emergency response or anything like that. We'll still have backups in place, so.
Yeah, I don't know why if we're already changing, why don't we just change to the 1-hour standard across the rest of the state, vice having a hybrid 45-minute standard, if we already know that procedures in place to get us to 45, why are we not just in adherence with the standard?
I think we discussed that at the last meeting, and you weren't comfortable with the 1 hour.
Correct. The state is 1 hour, but each municipality can set their own time. There are some that have a lot of population around and they stick to the 30 minutes. And we were just choosing to go to 45 because as Randy stated, I mean, it gives us a lot more people to pull from. I really don't want to go to the hour unless we absolutely have to.
Okay.
And it only expanded the pool by 1,500 people.
Right. Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I'd say 45 minutes.
Well, I would entertain that motion then, if you like.
Okay, I will motion for 45 minutes on the response time.
All right, we have a second, so roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye?
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Sheldon, aye.
Okay. Item
Motion
number,
that?
Michelle.
Oh, who seconded then? Randy, okay.
Item number 12, approve recommendation to renew the property casualty and workman's compensation insurance with EMC.
Yes, we review these insurance programs jointly with the city, and it generally involves our insurance committee. And Jenny, is there anything you want to add on the rates or anything before I turn it over to the committee? No. Okay, all right. If the committee would like to add any comments or anything?
So the only thing I would add is coming out of that insurance discussion was the emphasis on safety practices, policies, and inspections.
What I got out of the meeting is that HMU has more practices and procedures than the city does for
At the
safety.
insurance meeting, I explained how Jackie's been coming out and working with the guys and going through all the machines and what they run, and we're working on getting all of those manuals and all the procedures updated.
To try to prevent instead of,
Proactive.
Right.
proactive instead of
I think
reactive.
she's done with the water, what did you say today? She's done with the water and
the gas.
and the gas, and then she just scheduled a couple more appointments for the electric and telecom. In the water, she came out, 2 or 3 times?
4 or 5 times
4 or
she's
5.
out here with me, so.
I mean, it sounded like I said, we were doing
Trying to be proactive.
right.
I make a motion, if the insurance committee doesn't have anything else to add, I make a motion that we approve the recommendation to renew the insurance.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye?
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Sheldon, aye.
Item 13, CDL reimbursement agreement.
What we have is a situation based on some of the new regulatory requirements. It's one of the requirements for our new employees generally has to do with obtaining a CDL if they don't already have one. And under the new guidelines, they have to go through a full-blown educational program now, which is $5,000 to $6,000. So where previously we paid them to go take the test, now we have to pay for this program as well. So what we think is prudent is to set it up similar to how we have our apprentices. If we make that investment then we expect them to be here a certain amount of time to where we can recover our costs. So Jenny, you got anything specific you want to add?
No, just that I talked to Gene from the city, and he said that the city is putting in a similar plan, and he's talked to the county, and the county is also doing something similar. Since we already had one written up for our apprentice, we just used the same outline over a 5-year period.
I guess, so it's a new requirement, right? Levied on us by the state, by the federal? Federal?
Yep.
Is this across the board with all CDL? Or just?
Yeah.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep, all
This
CDL
was
now.
originally developed during the Obama administration, and then it was put on hold during the Trump administration, and then the Biden administration has decided to put it in place, and it's not something that had to be voted on. It's just an administration policy that they put in place, and it's across the board, across the country.
Yeah, so what I would offer is maybe the city writ large goes back and says, hey, these are the costs of this policy, and it gets submitted back up through the state. If it's a mandate from a federal organization, you can't mandate without resources, right? So we just identify the cost and then float it back up. Whether we get reimbursed or not, doesn't really matter. We just need to make sure we're identifying what the costs attributed to us are.
I can tell you that Iowa Western is planning on putting the classroom portion of this in place and providing it here in Harlan. The biggest problem as with most of the programs that you're launching them is finding instructors.
Did they say when? Because the last time I talked to them, they weren't offering the class for the CDLs that we need.
No, they don't have time to be on it yet, and again, because they're still looking for instructors. But I will,
Because they didn't have the Class A or B the last time I talked to them.
I'll keep working with Lori and with their continuing. This came up during the
Yeah.
legislative copy on Saturday too.
Okay.
We have some private businesses in town who are running into the same situation. And so right now, we're just trying to put together numbers. So, you know, if we show that we have a large potential student count, that'll of course expedite them making it available to us so they can have our students take their courses and pay the people.
And these are for new hires only.
For us,
Yeah.
it would just be for new hires.
Yeah, new hires if they don't have
He
one.
had his permit before the law changed, so he didn't have to
Yeah.
do all of the classes.
Yeah.
And then we had 2 new hires that already had CDLs, so we lucked out there also. But we're just trying to plan ahead for once instead of behind.
So you need a board motion
Yep.
for a CDL reimbursement agreement as we drafted here. So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Cyber aye.
Sheldon, aye.
Item number 14, request from the city of Harlan to allow for the use of water at the community garden.
What did they do last year?
Not really sure. The way it's currently set up is they can water gardens 1 inch. If we, in the water watch, they just water after hours.
Right.
Between 8 o'clock at night and 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
If we get into the tier 1, then they're allowed to water 1 inch a week.
So who's gonna,
Once per week.
Once per week.
Once per week, 1 inch, yeah.
so who's gonna be down at the community gardens watching these people, or any individuals watering?
It's.
So they'll just water whenever they want?
Pretty much is what they're doing.
Yeah, we're,
When the person that has the house and they're going by the guidelines, then the community gardens aren't going by the guidelines, per se.
Per se.
Did the city give us a reason why they want this? Why community gardens any different than any other user?
I would defer to the city.
Okay, I'll see if Gene is on the line, and Tina Miller just called in. I will see if Gene will. Gene, are you unmuted now?
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Did you hear Randy's question?
I did, and with the impending, or being in the water watch and knowing the other levels we're going to, also trying to get in front of this, so before garden plots are sold. How it was done last year was just, it was self-monitored according to the water policy. Iowa State Extension, who oversees the garden, or the city, we didn't have anyone staff down there or cameras to ensure compliance. So before determining to open the garden or not, just need a decision on this.
How much usage was really down there? How many plots were sold? Was the whole thing sold, or?
Yes, for the last number of years, all 18 plots have been utilized.
And who pays for the water for that?
The city pays for the water for that.
Which means we pay for it, HMU.
Yeah, so the only question is really, so the way this is written, it is a mandate that's not linked back to water conditions or conservation conditions. So I think the vote in front of us should be, at what conditions should they be allowed to have water under a water watch in tier 1, or just under water watch, or do they lose that ability under tier 2? It's not just a carte blanche, hey, they can have water the way it's being proposed here.
Yes.
So what is the request from the city to get them water under a water watch, or tier 1 or tier 2? What's the actual ask, Gene?
Did you hear that, Jim?
Say that again?
Did you hear, Jim?
Well, certainly I did.
Okay.
The ask is allowed to operate as it did last year, so as it went into tier 1, which so if it goes into tier 1, we would manage it just like we did last year. Ensure no changes.
So are you asking for any type of an exception, or just to be able to,
Clarify.
just be able to water as any other residential user?
Similar to last year, so no changes.
I don't know what that means. So
Can you tell us what you guys did last year?
I can't, the users were responsible to adhere to whatever the guidelines were. I don't have the policy in front of me.
So the same as residential private
Our
gardens.
system, just like residential was.
Yeah.
And then there shouldn't be
Okay.
any.
So they were just looking for a clarification, basically.
Did it affect this at all?
No.
Does it affect? Was there any
All they're asking
overusage?
for is the water like everybody else, then there's this instance in the policy, and there's nothing that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just a matter of treating it like a residential.
There is there's a water line down there that's turned on and off each year, and wanted clarification, understanding that before Iowa State Extension, which manages the garden, so as users sign up, that they're aware that there's no changes in policy, and if the water conditions get worse, that water line may be shut off. I think there's importance for clarification as to how it's being managed.
So basically, the request is that the community garden fall under the same guidelines and stipulations as private home gardens, as when it comes to the water watch and the tier warnings.
Yeah, just residential.
Just clarification. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So if there is a motion, that would be the motion that the community gardens fall under the same as the residential private gardens.
Yeah, so I'll motion that the community gardens be given access to water similar to other residential customers.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Cyber aye.
Sheldon, aye.
Okay, item number 15 is a request from the City of Harlan to move the filling of the Norman D. Stamp Aquatic Center from tier number 1 water warning to tier number 2 water warning. Currently, we're in a tier 1 water warning. What happens with the pool?
And I did put a copy of the water policy in everybody's packet for you to see if that's how kind of.
We actually filled the pool earlier in the season, generally somewhere between mid-April and mid-May, just depending on the weather. And so generally the filling occurs during the water watch. We don't anticipate that we'll get into the Tier 1 water warning until probably mid or late May. It just depends on the aquifers and on the demand and on the weather. But generally, the filling of the pool occurs at night. If we move forward with the maintenance, the water tower, it'll be used with water out of the water tower. So that the filling of the pool is not as big of a concern as much as the daily usage at the pool. The operation of the pool is, what we're talking about is between 8,000 and 10,000 gallons a day. Evaporation, what's called carry out, when the swimmers exit the pool and carry water out of the pool with them. And then also then daily cleaning and that type of thing. Last year, we used discharge water from the RO units to fill some of that gap. And the Iowa Department of Public Health responded verbally that they would allow it last year, but for some reason this year they raised a concern. We have since requested a review and further investigation, which we're participating in jointly with the city, and we have not received an opinion based on that second review request. But effectively, what we would be asking for is to move the public pools, the Stamp Aquatic Center and the Lewis Family Aquatic Center, from Tier 1 to Tier 2 to avoid any issue with that. That's the nature of the request from the city. If that Iowa Department of Public Health doesn't allow us to continue as we did last year.
What's the potential impact to our emergency water status if we have firefighting needs, emergency hydrant flush or whatever?
Well, in a month's time, that pool could use anywhere between 250, 300,000 gallons of water during their makeup. So there's a potential impact there, and that's why they were originally placed in Tier 1.
Yeah. And this is a recommendation, this Tier 1 and Tier 2, that wasn't originated by us. This is something that DNR put together, and
yeah. Our policy follows what was called WaterWise, which came through joint development from the Iowa Association of Municipal Utilities and the Iowa DNR, and that's how the pools were classified in that original WaterWise.
Because how much water are we supposed to have available on an emergency basis?
We're supposed to be able to, if something were to happen, I need to have at least 2 days worth of water in storage, maybe.
Okay. And that's how many 100,000?
It's 1.75 now.
Yeah.
So to put it into context, you're saying that they're using how much a day, 6,000 gallon?
Anywhere between, initial,
It's 6,000 a day.
6 to 10, it varies.
but that's the usage that they use, which accumulates to,
200,000 to 300,000, you said, so.
in a month.
Over a
In a
month.
month. And in a month, how many gallon do we make?
Oh, 88 million. But you have the entire consumption from the rest of the town, and the other industries and stuff like that are also impacted, remember?
Yeah.
So I think we already have a solution that we used last summer, right? And somebody has come along and said, we can't use that solution again. So I think we're, I wouldn't say premature, but we're developing a alternative COA while we're waiting for the primary COA, which is the Iowa Department of Public Health, to come back and say a yes or a no. And that, I think, is the responsibility of HMU helping, but really the city getting after that and making sure we get a favorable decision.
Well, they've already gotten that decision, they've appealed it, but the expectation of them changing that decision is very low. And we are in the pending area of starting to sell pool memberships and such, so a decision really does need to be made in a timely manner.
Their concern is hiring staff to.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't think we can sit around and wait for an appeal that may never come, particularly on something that this is a hot button topic for a lot of the people in this community. The pool is an asset, and it is a valuable asset to a lot of people in this town. If we suddenly say that, we're gonna err on the side of caution and tell them don't fill it, that's gonna impact a lot of families. And in my opinion, it's going to impact a lot of families unnecessarily, because I don't believe it's a high enough percentage of our production to warrant that kind of caution myself. I mean, when we look at our industrial customers that are interruptible and the amount of gallons that they use are dramatically higher than what the swimming pool is, I would hate to tell the residents of this community that we're not going to fill the pool, or that we're not going to allow the pool to open while we continue to provide millions of gallons to industrial customers. I personally would not be in favor of that, so.
So I don't disagree, I would just offer an alternative perspective. So if it's that important to us, then why are we not investing in production requirements, in trying to increase our production requirements? So what should be before the board is, from the water department, is what is the requirement that you have to help increase production?
We have that. That's the entire wellfield project.
Now, it's steps below that. There's well optimization measures that could be taken to increase production, to help with production in the near term. Right?
Treatment of the wells.
Treatment of the wells. Those are
Did we
things.
just do that?
We haven't done that since the end of last summer.
Yeah.
And last time we did it, it had very little or very limited.
The one on the early spring had, we only gained maybe 100 gallons a minute from it. The other one after that, we had a little bit better results from that.
So will retreating them do anything?
Well, it's not necessarily retreating those wells, it's treating one of our 17 wells to increase production across the board, yes. Treating wells does increase production.
What we've been trying to do is set up a well maintenance, these last couple of years, is set up a well maintenance wherever, every year we treat a certain percentage on a rotating basis so that they get treated at least once every 4 to 5 years. So that's kind of the program we've put in place.
And so do we have more wells scheduled to be treated?
2 to be scheduled between now and the end of this fiscal year, and then 2 more to be scheduled for after July 1, the beginning of the next fiscal.
Okay, so we've got that in place.
No. So we have it in place, but is it aggressive enough? That's my point. Is how many wells do you have total? 28?
We have 17.
17?
Yeah.
So 2 a year into 17, you're optimizing your wells.
Well, we're looking at 4 a year.
Okay.
Doing 2 in the spring, 2 the following, or 2 early in the spring, 2 in the fall.
Yeah, so I would offer that it's what are you going to do to optimize what you have? And not, I agree, the pool's a priority, but what are we as a board doing to optimize production to help maybe alleviate these challenges that are coming at us between a commercial customer and a pool and a residential concern and a commercial concern? I think there are things we can do. We could accelerate it to 8 a year, right? If we had the funding.
If we had the funding.
If we had the funding, I don't think.
I was going to say, we already have some of the highest water prices in the area, so continuing to throw additional money at it also seems like
And the return for the buck just isn't there, versus drilling the new wells, which we're trying to get going on.
Two separate things, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying though,
You've got a car that needs maintenance, but you're saving to buy a new one. What are you gonna do with the one you
while we're putting money, we're still spending unbudgeted dollars then to maintain the crap we've got, and then spending money to bring the system online. So, I mean, how much, the question is, where is the dollars best spent?
What does it cost, do you know, either of you know right off, what's it cost to treat a well?
$18,000.
Roughly 18,000.
Just to do an air burst and an acid treatment follow-up, which we've seen the best results from.
So right now, what we're budgeting is roughly 72,000 a year.
And so we'd have to double that if we're doing 8.
Right.
And the money's, I don't think the money's there.
Well, we don't know that yet, do we? We haven't looked into that. Is the money there? Are there other things that we're spending money on that maybe we could delay and take care of what is
Out of the water budget?
right? I don't know.
Well, you had the
Yeah,
We're
you had
already,
the budget.
we're well out of the budget now.
Yeah. we're
I
already,
don't see it getting any better.
yeah, we're already delaying a backup motor for the RO units. We're delaying mixers that the IDNR prescribed for the settling tanks and in the ROs. And then what was the third item?
Well treatments.
Yeah, the additional well treatments.
That we put on there, and we'll be delaying.
Are you full, all your people, are you all 100% staffed at the water department?
The water department and the meter shop are both one short.
Okay, so how much is
And
that?
we're gonna be posting those within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so are we,
What is that?
I mean, those are discussions we should be having. So we have a fully funded labor bill for this year, right? What's the labor for that individual, that FTE? Is that FTE more important than doing more well maintenance?
The additional FTE is not funded for the fiscal year through June. It is funded in the 22-23 budget.
Well, as we sit here talking about opportunities for the water plant, I believe we've gotten way off topic. We have a plan in place to mitigate the problems over the long term. We've been working on this plan now for a couple of years. We're obviously not going to solve that problem in the next 24 hours, but we do have a timely concern with the swimming pool, which is why this has been brought before us. The question I have is, rather than worry about what our long-term plans are going to be, since this isn't going to get mitigated in the next 24 hours, are we, as a utility, willing to commit to the city to keep a very important city asset accessible by the people of Harlan, or are we going to focus on providing industrial product? To me, that's what this question is. Are we going to make an adjustment so that the city can move forward with an important asset, or are we going to tell the city that they are simply not going to have our assurance of that? That's the question before us.
So if we get into a water emergency, can we just not?
If you get into a tier 2, then it would in fact shut them down. Right now, it would shut them down at a tier 1.
Yes.
So what we're asking for is that a tier 1 water warning would continue to allow them to operate. And then if we got into a tier 2, it would still shut them down. That's the only change that they're asking for here. We've never gotten into a tier 2 since I've been around. So
The aquifer hasn't increased its,
This policy was just created last year.
Yeah, it
Last year was
just
the only
created, so,
time there was
yeah.
any.
and we never reached, did we reach level 1 last year, or just a water watch?
we were in tier 1.
Yeah.
We were in tier 1, so we did actually, now the only way the pool last year was able to operate
They
then
used
was
the
using the
reed.
effluent.
Right.
But because that is not an option anymore, in order to guarantee that the swimming pool will function or operate, we would need to change the policy.
Right.
And that's what they're asking us to do.
Yep.
And in the tier 1, you do also ask that the large interruptible customer has to reduce their average usage by 25% also.
If the large customers don't reduce by 25%, do they just get fined then, or do you cut back their flow, or what happens?
It's fined up to and including reduced flow or shut off.
And they all know this, right? Like the
Yeah.
hospital knows.
Well, the only interruptible water customer we have is just the one large one on the east side of town.
And they're actually meeting with them next
Yeah, we're
week.
meeting with them next week, so
And that would be,
the same thing. They're the only interruptible water customer.
And it says right in here that if they're non-compliant, see section 1.04 for surcharges. There's a first violation and a second violation.
Did they comply last year under tier 1?
No.
they didn't comply?
it was a daily struggle with them, trying to keep them under, so.
But again, that's getting off.
Right. I go ahead and approve, I'd like to make a motion to approve the request for the city of Harlan to move from a tier 1 to a tier 2 water warning if in water conservation policy 6.
And you guys are all okay with the wording how it is? That's what I want to make sure that everybody that receives this policy is okay with the wording the way it is.
The red is what's changed?
Yeah.
Yes.
It just basically says they still have to stay in contact every year. It's not just an open blanket policy.
Right.
I'll second Michelle's motion.
Roll call?
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Shelton, no. Until I receive from the committee, the water committee, a water plan, short-term and long-term.
All right. On to item number 16, Shelby County Chamber of Commerce and Industry annual funding request for fiscal year 22-23 in the amount of $35,000.
This is our annual request to the chamber, so I'll turn it over to Todd.
Yeah, so this is just our annual request for support for economic development and Chamber of Commerce work we do here in the county. Earlier I sent kind of a recap, some of the highlights of the things that we were able to accomplish last year, in addition to some of the things we're looking to continue to do. Our main focus primarily on the economic development side is market rate housing, trying to continue to create market rate housing, also looking to try to bring in some multifamily dwelling units. And then on the business side, we're still looking to recruit, small manufacturers that will meet within our infrastructure restrictions that we have around here. So those efforts continue. We've had multiple conversations, but there can be things that get in the way. Currently, right now, one of the things that gets in the way is just availability of them to be able to get what they need to be able to build. So, but we'll keep pushing that down the road, continue to do that. Same time with the current businesses we have, whether it's COVID support, we're still doing some of that with some of our small businesses that we have. We also offer the RLF loans to them and help them get through some, if they have a bridge they need to get across and they can't do it through the bank, we help them with that. So this is just, again, we're not asking for an increase in the support that we receive, we're just asking for the same amount of money that we've received over the last few years.
Thank you.
And this funding is budgeted, correct?
Yes, budgeted funding. The primary contributors to the chamber are the county, the city, and HMU. It is budgeted.
I'll make a motion, we do the 35,000.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Shelton, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
These are the discussions we should
Does this help get a can placed here?
Information only items. IDNR deferred the raw water resource development project construction permitting to the city of Harlan.
Yes. So our construction permit for the raw water project is currently in the hands of the city inspections department. So we're working with them to coordinate when that review may be complete.
Okay, item B, the P&E invoice wellfield upgrade in the amount of $19,741.50.
Yep, pre-approved work. This is just the invoice for it.
Okay, and McClure FY invoices.
Same thing.
Item D, office hours 7:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. effective May 1st.
Yes, our current office hours are 7:30 to 4:30. And what that means is that generally staff, the CSRs, have to stay after 4:30 overtime to balance their daily activities and do all their daily reports and everything else. So what this does, it allows them that half hour between 4 PM and 4:30 PM to do all their daily closeout work, uninterrupted by customer walk-ins and last-minute checks coming in, that type of thing.
Was there a cost avoidance associated with that? You said they're not paying overtime anymore?
Not paying overtime.
What does that equate to? I mean, we're trying to find money for a well, right?
It's anywhere from 15 minutes to a half hour a day.
It figures out to be about $3,000 a year.
Yeah, it's not a lot of money.
If one person stays for a half hour every day, it's $3,000 a year.
So there's some companies in town, they close at 4:30. So if somebody needs something, now they won't be able to call when they get home from work at, like, say they get home from work at 4:15, get off work at 4, get home at 4:15, they call, and there's gonna be no one answering, right?
Correct, it'll go through our call center.
Call center.
But keep in mind that we were closed for over a year during COVID, and we were able to meet every customer's need.
From a practical matter, we still make arrangements with customers in certain situations. Try to make, we try to work with them as much as we can, whenever we can, so.
Because we want to be I myself, there's a week that I don't get off till 4:30.
Yeah, and it's, it's one of those issues, a lot of people don't get off till 5.
Right.
And we've always run into that, what are the best hours, the most practical hours, and we did track foot traffic, and we don't get a lot of foot traffic between 4 and 4:30 typically, unless it's a disconnect. It just depends, on maybe after we send out disconnect notices or something like that, but we still are open to making special arrangements if somebody gets in a bind or a circumstance comes up.
And keep in mind too that the field staff does also leave at 4, so it's not going to affect any appointments after that.
Right.
Call outs for the telecom text, there's no appointments scheduled after 4 o'clock anyway because they leave.
Yeah.
What about doing half the staff 8 to 4:30? CSR's half 8 to 4:30
That
one
doesn't
week?
help them at the end of the day when they're counting down their money.
Yeah.
And they're still going to work 8 hours a day, so coming in 8 to 4:30, then that would shorten their day. They're still going to work a full 8 hours. The office will just be closed at 4.
They don't do their countdown on their receivables until the door closes. So anything they do from that standpoint, closing out the day's books.
Oh, okay, I see.
Always has to occur after the office
Like the banks,
closes.
they do their
Yeah.
deposits, anything brought in after 3 o'clock, then that deposit
Okay.
doesn't go in until the next day. So now it'll just be, we'll cut it off at 4, they can sit there, count their drawer down, they're not still taking payments till 4:30.
Okay,
And then it will help them get all their work done that they can prepare for the next morning, so they don't, when they get here at 7:30, if they didn't get their service orders done the night before, then they're rushed because the guys start at 7, so then they're waiting to get all their paperwork to start working to go out. So it'll help in more than one situation too.
Okay.
Okay, and item E was the Suez Cyclone Tower Maintenance Contract renewal in the amount of $18,178.
Right. This is our annual maintenance contract on the Cyclone Tower, so. It's budgeted, so.
Could that be delayed? If we're searching for money?
We're in a contract with them.
Yeah, I know. But
I would prefer not to, just because of the work that they do.
okay.
And keeping us in compliance on the towers, so. Whether we could defer that payment.
So, with that payment, what it does is it covers the tower, every part of the tower. The tower paint, the tower washouts, the tower cleanouts, the external washings, everything is done and scheduled out over a 10-year period. And if you were to leave that contract, then we would have to renegotiate an entire new contract to get back into it, which could be rather costly increase once you exit it.
But I'm just saying, I only ask because if we're searching for money
Yep.
to play with the wells,
Yeah.
something's gonna suffer. Okay.
Yep.
Ken, you're up.
Okay, and just one quick question. The reason we moved the phone after my report was originally Matt was not going to be able to join us until later, and so he had a couple of comments he wanted to make on that, so that's why we moved that toward the end. Okay. We had our all-hands meeting yesterday, and some of the kudos. We had a kudo for Leela and Patty, working with a customer whose electricity had been shut off, so and we had another one for Eric, who helped a customer that was having problems. His comment basically was just that Eric was very kind and a real gentleman, so we always like to hear those kinds of comments. March 18th was Natural Gas Utility Workers Day, and I believe Colburn actually, you bought breakfast pizza or something for him, so appreciated that. Trevor received his, or passed his test for his grade 1 water operator's license, so we'd like to hear those kinds of results. Kenny Holloway, his anniversary date was it will be March 29th, and he's been working for us since 1993. And then as far as new employees, we've got some announcements. Todd Hively is joining us. He's going to work as a meter reader gas serviceman. He started March 7th. Dalton Fredericks is going to work for us as a journeyman lineman apprentice. And so we've got one more apprentice on board now. And Dalton started March 7th. He also had the 2-year schooling for apprentice linemen. So we were fortunate in finding him. Shannon Miller started the 21st. He's going to be a customer service technician for the repair for the telecom utility. And then also we received information that our latest hire, Jamie Pesci, he's not going to start for us until the 28th, but we did find out today that he's passed all the hiring prerequisites and has accepted the position, so he'll be starting on the 28th. So that's our new hires. So we filled a lot of holes. And some of that is from this expanded response time, so.
Good job.
Yep. Wholesale power costs for the month of February, $30.36 a megawatt hour compared to $16.55 the prior month. A lot of it still depends on whether or not Loiza runs as far as where our wholesale costs go. We had a tornado drill along with, it was statewide on the yesterday at 10 a.m. I heard today on the radio coming in that Omaha didn't have their test because of the rain and potential for inclement weather yesterday. But anyway, we all ended up back, the office people ended up back in the head end and water plant. You guys go to one of the storerooms or, yeah, so we had our drills ready for the weather season. Hopefully we never have to get to that point. Just one more update for the board with regards to our potential tie-in with Regional Water. I had a follow-up meeting with them, and their current schedule is they're starting their feasibility study. They have expanded the scope of the study because they've now received interest from additional communities wanting to join into water off the project, so they're potentially looking at a larger supply. We basically informed Regional Water that our interest is in 300,000 gallons a day, potentially, if it gets to that point where they have it. The schedule now is that water probably will not be available at the very earliest, probably fall of 2024. They have a whole design review funding process to go through as well, so. One piece of information for the board. We received an inquiry from Iowa Association of Municipal Utilities and from Iowa State University whether we would be interested in participating in a study creating decision tools to be used by municipalities when evaluating financial investments. In our case, it would be renewable generation, water projects, natural gas projects, whatever the case might be. So I told them that, yes, we would be interested in participating. And then, so we'll be working with IMU and ISU, and it's a software package, just decision support system for municipal utilities. So just wanted the board to be aware of that. It requires no financial investment, just simply exchanging information and input from our perspective as far as what goes into making decisions at the municipal level. So that's my report. Any questions? Okay, the next item on the agenda.
Item 19 would be the new phone system proposal for HMU internal use from Huntel Communications, unbudgeted.
Okay, we've had this conversation over the last few years about our current older analog system. It was brought up the hill from the old office. We have trouble with voicemail. Our on-call people, what shows up on the phone is the 5182. They're not able to get the number from who's calling after hours. There's just a number of issues. It's no longer supported by the manufacturer or the vendor that does provide, helps us troubleshoot some of the existing problem. But it's past time for a digital upgrade. It would be unbudgeted, but it would be split 5 ways. And the reason we moved to this point, like I said earlier, was Matt originally didn't think he'd be able to join us till the end of the meeting. And he just had one question on the contract. It talks about equipment and servicing, and the agreement that goes with this is just for our internal use. Now, the second part of this,
Can
yeah,
Can you hear me?
yeah.
everybody hear him? You're cutting out.
Yeah, okay, let me, okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
That's better.
Okay, because I am able to get on Zoom, and it's telling me for the first time in my entire Zoom career, your speaker is not working. Connect to a different speaker. I'm like, I don't have a different speaker. So I've called in, and I just got kicked off the meeting for some reason. But I want to be able to make sure that everyone hears me. And I'll let Ken finish, and then I'll kind of take over with what is going on with the contract that regards the Huntel.
Yeah. Okay. So to finish up, the other part that we've talked about over the years is the only way for us to compete at the commercial level in the telephone business is to have equipment that we can provide to our customers. Commercial customers within our service territory, that's usually one of the requirements. If they want to use our service, they want us to also provide the phone equipment, which up until this point we've never been able to. And so after all the years we've looked at different vendors, we've looked at everything from Verizon to Zoom to you name it, we've looked at it over the years. And we believe we've actually found a product that has the potential to be offered to commercial HMU telecom customers in the future. So this technology gives us an opportunity to test it and have it available for display here in the office. And then the current agreement that's attached to this only covers the phone systems in the office, just the office use. If we decide to go this path, there would be a second agreement where we would basically act as a quasi-distributor selling the technology as part of our package, and it would be installed and serviced by this vendor. So it ultimately fills that thing we've talked about a long time as being a shortcoming in our telecom offerings, not having any equipment available for commercial accounts. So.
Well, okay, if the board can all hear me clearly right now, raise your hand.
Okay, perfect. I reviewed the master agreement, and I received it less than 48 hours ago. It's not a terribly long document, but I figured if we're going to order equipment based on the current status of the situation of ordering anything, I thought it would be wise. I normally send a memo to Ken, have time to draft that. I did not have an opportunity to do that. I did, however, have an opportunity to review the entire master agreement. And there's a few things that I wanted to put on the record in a public meeting that you should know about. First of all, there is no term that I can find in the master agreement. So it's not necessarily defined how long we're obligated. The termination part of the agreement doesn't really exist either, except for the fact that if we do not pay on a timely basis, which in their language is when the equipment is delivered, then they do not have to give us any notice of when they can take back the equipment. Now, I've never seen that before. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. I mean, obviously the people at HMU are on top of those types of things. So I guess it's just a logistics thing that I think everybody should know. There is also a situation in the agreement that stated that prices, I got two documents. One was basically, here's a list of the equipment that you can purchase, and here's what it's going to cost, and here's its capabilities. Now, I do not know what those are internally for HMU and their employees, but I think Jenny would know better than that. But it's kind of like a catalog you can order from. So it shows all these potential things you can do. It also states, and this is related, that if you choose equipment, the price can change based on when you can choose it, and that is entirely up to them. Now, they don't warrant their equipment.
Matt, did you
the other
see
thing
that?
that is important that I noted was that this agreement with them cannot be assigned. And I think that's a fairly important thing that kind of popped out at me, because you can't assign. I mean, if it's internal use only, you can't necessarily obligate customers with this equipment without their express permission. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah, so,
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, basically what I'm saying is this is my understanding right now for internal use. So, and it also affects the fact that if you sell the telecom, this might affect that situation as well, because it's completely written to their benefit, to the point where they have 100% ability to say no. That's pretty much the basics. The choice of law in the agreement is Nebraska, which I don't have a problem with, just because of it's a lot easier to get someone from Nebraska that I can work with to deal with anything. But it's not a long agreement, but it has a lot of little picadillos in it, which is a word I haven't used in a long time. I don't know why I did, but it literally, it caused a lot of problems. But you probably have the best ability to be serviced through them. I would not mind if there was a term attached, and it's possible that that could be done. That could be negotiated. I do not know. If it doesn't matter to you, they provide great equipment. I've known this I've heard this company. I'm not endorsing them. I work for you. But there are assignment issues if the telecom, is sold for whatever reason, and that's the decision the board makes, or if we start providing to customers. Now, I also don't know how much of their equipment we need.
Matt, did you see that
The
sheet?
fact that they can, pretty much, if you don't get checked in on time, come and pick up the equipment because someone else needs it, that's a unusual thing. But I think it's also important to note in this day and age that it's not necessarily like you're going to get equipment whenever you want. It could be on a slow boat from somewhere else. So those are my issues. I just wanted to point them out because I didn't have an opportunity within the last 2 days to write a full memo about this. And they do not warrant their equipment necessarily, or at all. That's also in there. And if you enter this agreement, it has no necessary terms, so you essentially can just stop paying and they can take all the equipment back. That's fine. But they do have the ability to price equipment in the future at their price without our input under this agreement. So if something, all of a sudden, within 5 months, you need another one, because you have more employees, you need this or that or the other thing, extra equipment you didn't order in the first place, and now all of a sudden the price is triple, that's what this agreement indicates they can do. So, I'm just here to provide the information. And that's the information I found through this agreement.
Mitel phone systems are sold internationally, and we don't necessarily have to choose Mitel Communications as a vendor. I could go out online and buy the same equipment. The purpose of having Mitel Communications do it is because, for one thing, we got a very good discounted price on the phones and the equipment. And number two, they have the labor and the manpower to come and install the system on our office.
Yeah,
so,
and I was gonna, I had on my notes, Jim, I was gonna add you to I would like Jim to kind of chime in on his thoughts on this, because I didn't have an opportunity, since I just got this less than 48 hours ago, to really have an idea of what it is that we're talking about purchasing.
Right. Before we go any farther, so I have a question. So why is a sole source being presented to the board and we haven't gone out and sought out, if we were trying to replace our phones, why it had a price where it's at, why have we not sought other bids?
why are we what?
Why haven't we gone out and sought other bids?
Do a RFP and
Yes.
different vendors.
Why is the board now presented with a sole source purchase request?
Primarily because we've been looking for a technology that we felt met our needs and a vendor that was close, that was reputable, that could support it.
So we've been down, since I've been here, we've done this path already once with the social event, right? So I would offer that this probably needs to be the due diligence is done to make sure that we are getting a fair price, that we're getting the technology that we want and the service that we need. And then the board makes decisions based off of that information. And then there's a legal review, obviously, that's required as well. So that's,
To carry on with what Jim is saying, I have a problem with the fact that we started the conversation with, we've been looking at this for several years, and yet it remains unbudgeted. I find it hard to believe it's an emergency situation if we've been dealing with it for years. So the emergency is, the current phone system is functional? Is that true?
Correct.
Okay. I recognize that it's a neat new toy, but we are not in a financial position to drop $23,548 on something other than a well that I'm aware of, particularly without competitive bids and without budget. So I'm not comfortable at all with it.
My question is, have we talked to anybody about how well this phone system, Mitel, works?
Mitel's been in business 30, 40 years.
I know,
Yeah.
but have we talked to anybody about how well it works? My husband worked at the communications center for 39 years, and he wouldn't do Mitel if his life depended on it.
Really?
He had a Mitel system. Mitel said, it's not our fault, it's your other vendor's fault. Every time they had problems, and they had problems a lot.
Depends what their situation is.
They would not integrate with their computer systems. And so it wasn't Mitel's fault, it was HTS's fault. And finally, it was a case of, you're both showing up here and you guys can figure it out and point fingers at each other while you're here.
Yeah, I have no idea what system they had or purchased or...
Because I just sent him a text and said, would you recommend Mitel? And he says, not on your life. So have we talked to any current customers of Mitel that have Mitel systems?
yeah, not doubting your expertise, that's not what I'm trying to do.
No, the situation is our current office phone system is end of life. Mitel actually bought Toshiba, and they no longer manufacture parts, replacement parts for the Toshiba phone system. So.
But I agree with David. If you guys have been talking about this for quite some time, why all of a sudden is it an unbudgeted item that's got to go in for $23,000?
Originally, we were looking to do hosted PBX on our phone switch, and then Ribbon, our vendor, had another product called Candy, which was a cloud product to go with. Both of those venues were in the $50,000 range, for us to do that. And then Ribbon with their Candy product, their largest customer was City of Los Angeles with 22,000 phone lines. They decided to sell that product, and so that's no longer available. And really, for Telcom to spend $50,000 for hosted PBX on the switch is cost prohibitive. This is different. This is our office phone system where the need is. The hardware could fail and there's no replacement parts to be found. We've already had a case with the messaging system. It's limping along, so that's what's generated the need to replace our office phone system. Not to mention that the phones are probably more than 15 years old or whatever. So, and it doesn't function as we need to have it for after hours. And the newer phone systems are much better.
So then why hasn't this been put in the budget? If you knew it was coming, why hasn't this been put in the budget before?
Well, the need just came up for it because of the recent sale of Toshiba to Mitel and no parts to be.
But if it's been discussed in the past, why all of a sudden? And I know.
It just came up now because we just came across this product. We've been looking at products over the years. We couldn't find anything that was really tweaked our interest. And
But you have a contingency though in telecommunications of $10,000, right?
What's that?
You have a contingency fund for $10,000?
Right, but Telcom's not buying the phone system for HMU. We don't,
It would be a five-way because it's office use.
it's split amongst all the departments, so.
Right, so your share of that, it could come out of your contingency money though, right? Your share of it.
Sure.
But it's still an
That would be
unbudgeted item.
4%.
Yeah.
Well, and the other concern is if we're looking at, if we get this and then we market that to potential commercial customers, you know, and the way that Matt explained this contract, I don't know how much, you know, ability we have to market this
Well,
to others and everything.
And
So-
that's why I said, when I introduced it, that's why I said, this agreement is just for the office use.
Yeah, I understand.
We would have to do a different agreement if we went into promoting it to commercial customers, so.
No, we just buy the licensing for, go ahead, man.
That's absolutely correct. And Jim's correct too. I do recall this has been something that's been looked into for a period of time. And it is not the fault of Jim or anybody or Ken or Jen. I just received this master service agreement. It doesn't mean we can't do anything else. And it was actually, if you want to place any type of, why we're talking about this meeting, it's because I said, well, I think it's important. I will make the time to do it, even though I received it very, very recently. And I did not have the opportunity to get input from Jim or Jenny or Ken within the less than 2 days. I just got what they sent them. And actually Jenny and Ken mentioned, you know, we don't have to have it on this board meeting, but I said I can review it and I will take the time to do that. And so I did. And that's nothing on them. And we're not putting you to anything tonight. It could have been on the next board meeting or a few months later, but as Jim explained, he does have some reasons. Ken has explained that, you know, it's been a while where we've been trying to figure this out in the future, which is obviously unpredictable. So I knew that, but I mean, I guess if we're going to talk about an agreement that's offered to us, the board needs to know about it, and they need to know my opinion. And that's what I was asked for. And so I think we just kind of let the board decide on how we want to proceed. There's not necessarily a vote that's going to be taken tonight or has to be taken tonight. So I want to make that clear.
No, I think their concern was just that it wasn't budgeted, and if we've been looking into doing this, have it at least budgeted, and then should have went out and got the bids and did a formal bid process for more than one. I don't think it's that it was at this meeting.
Yeah, no, I think
in general.
I think in general that we are at a point, Jim had other commitments this evening, so he had to leave. I do not believe that there's going to be any action taken on this unless somebody has an overwhelming desire to put up I'm going to say we're just going to table it.
I don't necessarily recommend any, but I guess when you get something in, you get something in, and then you can go from there.
Yeah.
And then technology changes, as Ken explained, and Jim explained, and Jenny explained. I think that that's completely appropriate. I just thought I would tell you what this particular service has provided us as far as information.
Okay. So you can come back with something
And
else.
the earlier is better, and get it going if that's the board's choice.
Very good. Thank you, Matt. I think I can speak for the board in suggesting that we need to look into other options. We need to have more information than what we have here. This may be the perfect solution for HMU, but at this point in time, I don't think anyone here is comfortable in making that choice. I know Jim would like to see a competitive bid from other possible solutions, and I would like to entertain the possibility that we just add it to next year's budget and work it in that way instead of treating it as an unbudgeted emergency, because I personally don't see it as an emergency. I see it as, there's a lot of products and things that we use every day that have achieved end of life, but that doesn't make them an emergency, so.
So when you say next year's budget, you actually mean 23 to 24, so
Yeah.
another year and a half.
Yeah, but that's the point. If I'm wrong in that we aren't going to be able to limp with the system that we've got for that period of time, then we'll have to look at something different. But
Yeah, the messaging unit is in need of replacement, and there's not one to be found, a piece of equipment, so we may experience periodic issues with voicemail.
was this a highly distributed system, or was this a unique and rare?
Yeah, it was.
And there's
I found
nothing.
one on eBay for $45, but I don't think I'd buy it.
I've maintained a lot of equipment off eBay over the years. Sometimes that's the direction that you have to operate, but.
So have I.
Yeah, that's the nature of most American business. We don't have the ability to just buy new all the time. So just like I said, just because it reached end of life does not make an emergency.
Do we have to do anything formally, Jenny, as far as table it or anything like that, or what?
If
Or
you
just
table it, you're
take-
usually tabling it until like the next meeting, so I would say that they could vote no.
But I mean, I'm still interested in talking more
Yeah,
about
we
it,
just
but
need to go
I think we have to, this kind of got,
There's no motion to carry it forward right now. If you want to bring it back, we
There would
can
be
do
no
it that
motion,
way.
and therefore it wouldn't be,
Motion.
it would be dropped.
Well, it's not an emergency, the phones are working, the messaging system's moving along, so we had plans to, I think we might even have it in our telecom budget, $150,000 for the hosted PBX, we just didn't ever do that part of it, so.
One of the issues that we do have, that is the reason we've been discussing it, is when we do get a large outage and people start calling in, our phone system can't handle that, and it just drops. Either it just rings when they call, or it doesn't get through at all. And so that was one of the
Or they
issues.
throw it on Facebook. Or they throw it on Facebook.
Right, so that's what we try to communicate, is that our phone systems are down if we know.
Right.
But you have to know first.
Right.
And we don't know until.
Someone will say, what's wrong with HMU or something like that, they'll say on Facebook too.
And
Okay,
that's usually how we discover it, is somebody will be like, I tried to call, there's an answer.
for lack of a motion then.
for lack of a motion, we shall move on to item number 20, which is a possible closed session to discuss a strategy with counsel in matters that are presented in litigation or where litigation is imminent, where its disclosure would likely to prejudice or disadvantage the position of the government body in that litigation. Matt, I have a question for you on this. Do you feel that we need to go into closed session on this, or how important is that?
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
all right, then since council has recommended it, I'll need a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
Thank you.
Michelle, aye.
No, I need a second.
Oh, second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye?
Resign.
Seibert, aye.
Okay.
If this has to do with the water, do we need the water?
No.
It's not
No,
water.
this doesn't have to do with. the-
Okay, thanks.
And just for those that are online, we will not enter back into open session. If anybody wants to know the outcome, they sure can give us a call.